My guest today on 12 Minutes With is Enrico Letta, the former Italian Prime Minister, who is now the Dean of the EE.UU University and President of the Jacques Delors Institute. Enrico Letta, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
So you're in Brussels to discuss with ministers your One Europe, One Market roadmap, which stems from a landmark 2024 report you wrote on how to further integrate the EU single market. 2 years on, how do you rate the pace of the EU in implementing those important recommendations that you made?
It is clear that we had a year 25 that was a very complicated one for many reasons. First reason was that Trump 2 was not a copy of Trump 1. So I think at the European level, 25 was a complicated year and transition year in terms of implementing the two reports and Draghi's report too. I see today an acceleration, and the acceleration started in February with the European Council retreat in Aldenbiesen. But I have to say that the political reason of the acceleration, for me, is linked to the Greenland crisis. The Greenland crisis was a sort of big push for the European leaders to say, now we have to be serious in applying the two reports, in implementing the two reports, and in trying to strengthen the European single market.
How would you overall describe how the EU's responded to a more aggressive Donald Trump, a more erratic, some would say, Donald Trump?
I think some responses were absolutely, I would say, more than I expected. Trade, for instance. In 5 months, we closed India, Indonesia, Australia, Mexico, Mercosur. I have to say more than in the last 10 years. And it is because of this very complicated geopolitical scenario and the need to react. So on some of them, the reaction was absolutely at the level of the threat. On others, and I mentioned, first of all, this topic of strengthening the single market is crucial. We are junior partners of the US. We are not at the same level. They are bigger than us. On real economy, we play the same championship with the US. We are 17% of world GDP, they are 25%. It's the same championship. But when it comes to finance, our 17 becomes 11% of market cap. Their 25% becomes 60%, and 60 and 11 is not the same championship.
That brings me to the Savings and Investment Union, which is one of the things that this feels like there's a real political push behind it, and one of the things you advocated for as well in your report. How urgent is this now, given the situation of imbalance that you've just described?
The key point is related to the fact that we need to integrate and to have one financial market in Europe. Is the only way to scale. The key point is scaling on finance, because we are too small compared to the US, and that has consequence on the investments. They are bigger than us in terms of investments.
So it's clear that for emerging companies in strategic sectors, this is very important. But when it comes to European citizens, how would you describe to a normal citizen why this Savings and Investment Union, which means integrating the EU's financial market, would be beneficial for them as well?
First, because we are the continent of savings and savers. We are top in that, but we use very badly our savings. Our savings are not giving us the good returns that they could do and should do. If, in the case of savings and investments, putting savings in the savings and investments account, so this European label of savings, will give them better return than what they have today. And the second one is this bridge between savings and investment in real economy. We are so bad in creating this bridge today. The reference of where the US won the race today, AI, clearly. Why? With public money? No. With private money, private investments, because of their financial market. So we need to recuperate in that, and we have to use the possibility to raise our investments with the needs we have. We used to sell our mobile phone to American consumers. It seems today something very, very, I would say, old. But we have to come back to this period in terms of being as Europeans, good in innovation and tech, but we need this capacity of having investments and private investments.
And for this capacity, money is needed, the possibility, the liquidity to invest. And there is a new proposal on the table made by the Spanish government in order to really boost joint borrowing, that the EU now needs to realise that it needs to turn to common debt in order to finance these priorities. We had Christine Lagarde, the ECB president, in that seat last week saying that this is a serious proposal that needs to be debated. Would you agree with her?
I like very much Carlos Cuerpo's proposal. I think it goes in the direction that is absolutely needed. The main point is to be good in having the two tracks together. Public money and private money. Because what we didn't do, we focused only on public money, and focusing only on public money, we were always in this derby between frugals on the one hand and southerns on the... We have to stop this totally crazy war, and I think Carlos Cuerpo's proposal goes exactly in that direction.
You mentioned this derby, you said, between the frugals, the typically northern states that don't want to embrace joint borrowing in the same way as countries like Spain and France. Do you think this inevitably means that the European Union will essentially change the way it works and will have groups of countries that are willing to take these bold steps, doing so together without the 27 moving as one?
There's a problem of inertia. I like very much the E6, so this group of 6 member states, the biggest economies, trying to push on these topics at financial level. I like it because it's the way to break the inertia. In these 2 years, in the presentation of the report, in the implementation of the report, I saw many, I would say, a big consensus, applauses and so on, but inertia is the big enemy.
But when you say break the inertia, does that mean that, in your view, we are moving towards an European Union which will work in blocks, so we will have groups that move together to implement certain policies?
Europe is at 27 today. Tomorrow it will be at 35, 36. The enlargement is a great perspective. I'm a great fan of the enlargement. So I consider that we have to move together. The point is the avant-garde as necessary. And I think the entire story of the European Union is a story of avant-garde. Take the euro. I remember in my country, Italy, or in France, or in Germany, half of the population was with a political environment very skeptical because they were afraid to lose identity, losing the national currency. Then today we have the euro. The euro is an enormous success, and thanks to the euro, we are stronger in the world, and 80% of European citizens, they are happy because of the euro. And the most important point, we didn't lose our identities. We are still Italians, French, Spanish, German, with the euro. So we can do the same on energy, on connectivity, on financial markets, being more competitive without losing our identities.
You mentioned that scepticism towards the euro, particularly in France and Italy, which are 2 of the countries facing crucial elections next year, among others as well. Do you fear that this narrative of a return to national sovereignty and a sentiment of anti-European sentiment, if you like, is about to return to the political mainstream?
National sovereignty today against European sovereignty is a fake. It doesn't exist. National sovereignty means sending gifts to the Americans and the Chinese. We have to be very clear on that, because national sovereignty doesn't address the right scale. The right scale to be competitive with American and Chinese is the European one. We can do it preserving national identities. So this is why the true battle is for European sovereignty. Of course, as everyone, I'm following the next year elections in Europe, not only France and Italy. We have Poland, we have Greece, we have Spain. So it will be a very important year. But I am confident that at the end of the day, this idea of doing things together because of our competitors are giants.
Finally, I want to come back to the enlargement question. You said you support it, but we do know that several big European countries previously considered economic powerhouses are facing stagnation. Do you fear that this could perhaps dampen the political will to accept countries like Ukraine, like Moldova, like Albania, whose GDP is inevitably much lower than European states, and that the question of the economic consequences of enlargement could come back to bite?
I think that we have to separate. There are some countries that are, for me, absolutely ready to be in the Western Balkans. I don't see, frankly speaking, any problem. And they are not big economies, so it's not complicated for Europe to accept them very fast. The key point is to consider that, of course, we need to have some institutional changes to have the enlargement. What we didn't do 20 years ago, that was the mistake, eliminating the veto right in foreign affairs and in defense. But I see, frankly speaking, what the Hungarians did was a great signal. They did it with democratic rules, but they clearly said we need each country protagonist in Europe, not against Europe, because the destiny of all our citizens is a destiny of, we say, prosperity only with a strong Europe. The US and China are not a joke. They are competitors, and they are competitors against us, and we have to know it.
Okay, Enrico Letta, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.